All right, here we are on a Thursday. This is a ThinkTech Talks with Andres Albano, Senior Vice President of Investment Properties at CBRE. Used to be
CB Richard Ellis.
CB Richard Ellis. What
Right.
does CB stand for?
Caldwell Banker.
Ah, of course, I forgot. Yeah, so
And years ago they separated.
Yeah, CBRE, which is downtown in Bishop Square in Hawaii Tower specifically.
Yes.
And Andres has been in the real estate business since 1812.
No, 1800, I think.
Okay. And I want to call the show "Community Matters" because it's a title a show name I've been thinking about lately. It's a double entendre. It's matters involving the community, but it's also that community matters. It's important to us. And this is one of those kinds of issues. We're calling the specific episode Returning the Land to Agriculture. And in Hawaii, that is a really important issue, even in the long term, a critical issue. And nobody knows more about the way you actually do that than Andres knows. We've had some shows before with Andres over the years. He participated in that panels. And it's very important that we check in with him from time to time, find out how it's going in the larger context of the real estate community and the mechanics of real estate in Hawaii, with all of that legislative gloss that you find that sometimes helps. Sometimes. Anyway, so the proposition I put to you, Andres, for this discussion is, we used to have a lot of agriculture here, and not being nostalgic, just being, practical, it was very important to the state. It built the state. And now, for one reason or another, some good reasons and some regrettable reasons, we don't have agriculture here, and or at least not in large dimensions. And we need to get back to that for a lot of reasons. So I'm just wondering how you think the battle she is going.
Well, I'm not sure you can call it a battle. There's a dynamic shift, of course, with agriculture in Hawaii. You remember, I was growing up, Dole was here, Hawaiian Pineapple, Del Monte, Sea Brewer, you can name those companies.
Sure.
It was about the early 2000 when we were assigned to sell Sea Brewer lands. We could see that
CBRE.
We had CBRE. We had a team that helped Sea Brewer to sell their assets. At that time, I think it was about 2002, 2003, we realized that no longer will we see the large plantations. I mean, it was disappearing, and I think Doc Byer saw that also when he was still alive. And we searched the whole world to try to see if we could find a company that would replace Sea Brewer. Failing that, Sea Brewer decided to shut down and sell all of their assets. And interesting enough, they had 70,000 acres on both Big Island and Maui, and took us with the team from Sea Brewer. We were able to sell all of that in 3 years, 70,000 acres.
Who'd you sell it to?
Farmers,
The small farmers, not big farms. The small
big.
farms.
High net worth individuals, land bankers, ag developers, and we find that profile. No matter what ag lands you sell, you're going to find the same people buying it. Not the same specific people, the types of people.
Yeah.
After the Sea Brewer assignment, we were assigned to sell the Campbell Estate properties. And if you know, those properties used to be farmed by Del Monte, who left the state several years ago. Took us 3 years, we sold that 13,000 acres. Same group. Now here's where a new group came into the state, the seed companies. Pioneer Hybrid,
Yes.
Syngenta,
Yes.
Monsanto,
Yes.
Dow AgroSciences. If you want to, you may call them the new agriculture. Because when you look at the amount of revenues they generate, it's phenomenal, Jay. And they don't need as much land. So
They're very efficient.
very efficient. And what they do to help agricultural operations throughout the world is important, because you know what they do, they genetically modified seeds
Sure.
and able to help agriculture.
Sure.
We sold all of those lands in 3 or 4 years.
Is that right? So at this time, it wasn't to the same cohort. This was not. This was the big companies.
The big companies,
rather than the little.
well, also little companies.
Oh, okay.
Again, the same profile. I'm engaged right now to sell all of the Dole land portfolio, as you well know. We're selling 16,000 acres, separate, different parcels, about 118 different parcels, and the total retail value was about $180 million. In January of this year,
that's not much per acre, but this is agriculture. It's
This is
not worth as
agriculture.
much as downtown.
yeah, no, two different things. I'll get to that.
Yeah.
But if you take the 16,000 acres and the retail value at $180 million, you're talking about roughly $11,000 per acre. Okay, but these are ag lands.
Which means you can't use it for residence.
You can, in a way, and here's how they do it. The code allows you to build farm dwellings, which is really residential dwellings.
Yeah.
Farm dwellings on Ag 1 or Ag 2 type zone properties.
Yeah.
But you need to farm the land. There's no way you're going to, just build a house and not farm the properties.
So is that the law? That
That's
you
the
must
law.
farm the land?
That's correct.
You don't farm it, and what happens to you?
Good question.
They come for you in the middle of the night?
I've talked to the city about that and how they monitor that, but that's the law. Okay.
All right.
So in January of this year, the chairman of Dole decided to sell everything. Coming off a successful sale of Lanai,
Yeah.
he wanted to sell all of the Dole lands. Now remember, we're only selling 16,000 acres. Dole has 25,000 acres. So what Dole did is they kept 5,000 acres in prime agriculture they're currently farming for
Is that
pineapple.
here in Oahu?
Oahu only.
Yeah.
Coffee, cacao, chocolate, and some, coffee, cacao, and pineapple. Three major crops. And they're very successful at it. So they excluded the 5,000 acres. That left the entire 20,000 acres, which included the 16,000 acres that we were selling, and offered it to anyone who wants to buy it in a bulk sale. And the price point is for this 20,000 acres is $200 million.
Big discount.
It is, because if you look at the retail prices of the 20,000 acres, I think it approaches pretty close to $240 million.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Are there people that wanted to buy it in bulk? Oh yeah.
Yeah.
We're talking to several right now.
Yeah.
Who wants to buy it in bulk, especially the state of Hawaii, because they realize what happens is they need to buy these lands to help the farmers. Okay, the farmers are not able to purchase these lands and make it work. Let me give you some examples. We're leasing these lands right now, Dole is, and I'm sure it's below market value because they just want to keep the tenants on the parcels, at about $300 per acre per year.
That's cheaper than 11,000.
Well, but if you look at what these lands would sell for on the mainland, and assuming a 4.5 or 5 cap, this would translate to about $6,000 per acre. Remember that number, $6,000 per acre. That's what they would purchase on the mainland. Hawaii, now, prime farmlands here is selling anywhere between $20,000 and $25,000 per acre. You see the disparity?
Huge.
So that's the reason why farmers cannot purchase these properties to farm.
Yeah.
Now, why is it so high? Because this is Hawaii. There's a shortage of property. The
Supply,
shortage
demand,
supply.
yeah.
Exactly. And there's always that magic of Hawaii. A lot of these high profile, high net worth individuals, they land bank these lands and they keep it. And they farm it, but it's, the cash flow is not enough to justify the price points of these properties. So that's why it's important that the state gets involved. And they want to purchase these lands and offer longer term leases to the farmers. I'm not sure they're in a position to sell any of these lands and purchase it.
Well, I
But,
mean, in a position they could if they wanted to, but
yeah, they probably not, because then they would.
political pushback. Though.
Yeah.
Because the people who want the state to have a lot of land are the same people who don't want the state to sell any land.
I hear you. Let me turn this off. Sorry. But anyway, so since Dole made that announcement to sell it in bulk. In the meantime, we're still selling individual parcels, and we have two price points: the individual parcels, and if you want to purchase in $20,000 acres in bulk. So while the state and these other bulk buyers are reviewing the parcels, we're selling individual parcels. And since the beginning of the year, when David Murdoch made his announcement, as you know, the fundamentals, economic fundamentals, have improved considerably. So a lot of the buyers that were waiting to purchase individual parcels decided they better jump in and buy these lands before the state or some bulk buyer buys it. They wouldn't have a chance to purchase it. So that's what we are experiencing right now. So there's a lot of interest in these lands. Individual parcels as well as a bulk buyer.
So, so is this the same kind of group then that made the other acquisitions,
Yes.
or is it different?
Yeah, well,
Same-
it is.
Yeah.
Plus, we now have the energy people coming into play, right? Photovoltaic,
Wind.
alternative wind energy.
Yeah.
And we're talking to them. Now, we were not able to, the business model they had didn't allow them to purchase these lands, because you know how it is. They needed to get a contract from Wayne Electric in order to get a contract.
It's a
from-
conundrum.
Yeah, right. It's a dilemma, if you will, if you want
Yeah,
to call it
yeah.
that. So, but there are some very large, well-heeled energy companies that are able to do this.
Yeah,
purchase
they
the
don't
land.
have to have the purchase power agreement.
They don't need them.
They can wait
put
it out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's who we're talking to also, as far as being a bulk buyer for these lands. So, if the economy doesn't turn south, if we continue to improve, I figure we'll sell these lands in 4 years, all of them.
Oh, that's pretty good.
And it's 20,000 acres.
Yeah.
That would leave only Kamehameha schools in the state of Hawaii in the business of, offering these lands for farm.
Yeah. So, okay, let me try to get the implications of all this on a systemic basis. First of all, it doesn't sound like, I remember when the plantations began to come apart in the Big Island, on the Hamakua coast. I don't know, maybe you were involved in that.
These are CBRE lands, correct?
Yeah, those CBRE. Okay, they were sold off in relatively small, but agricultural lots.
Yeah.
And there were a lot of farmers, real middle-class farmers that went in and farmed those lots. I suppose some of them built homes and weren't so interested in farming, but it really happened. It happened. Maybe not in every inch of it, but it happened. You think that kind of, use of the land, that kind of, use of the farming use of it like that, sort of diversified agriculture, is happening in all the lands you're talking about, or is that a phenomenon that has kind of come and gone?
No, I think it's growing. If you're talking about small farmers purchasing or leasing those lands, it's growing because they want to return to the land. And this group that wants to make sure that our local food production stays here in Hawaii.
So give me an example. I'm sure you deal with the buyers. Give me an example. What do you find? Who is doing this? Is it a young couple? They went to UH Manoa. They studied some agriculture and some accounting. and now they want to grow things with their hands. They want to make their home on the land, on the farm. Is it like that? Give me an example of a real case.
Not for these lands, because these lands are larger parcels. Now let's go back to CBRE lands.
Yeah.
As you know, those lands were from, they extended out from Hilo out to Hamakua,
Yeah.
from Hilo out to Kau,
Yeah.
and then of course on Maui, West Maui Mountains. The price points were a lot cheaper then. It's 10 years ago. Okay, it's much more expensive today, and especially on this island, because this is where our population is.
Yeah,
so who's buying these lands?
Yeah.
Because these are larger parcels, they're larger companies. More recently, we sold a parcel, about 100 acres, to a ag developer. What he's going to do is subdivide the lands in order that these lots, let's say it's ag 1, 5-acre lots, where you're able to put a farm dwelling on it and then farm the lands. Pomohoa Estates is one of the gated communities in Wailu, is an example of that.
For farming.
For farming.
Gated for farming.
Gated for farming. But it's a little more expensive than the ordinary.
Yeah.
And then you have the larger companies, and you'll be surprised when we're able to announce who's buying these lands, who these people are. There's not much. Let's go back to CBRE. At first, we were concerned that a lot of the buyers would be from the mainland, right? coming in.
I would be concerned with
Yeah.
that too. If that was
But
happening
that
on
didn't
a
happen.
large basis.
Most of the buyers were local.
That's
from,
good.
from here.
That's good. And most of the buyers were into farming.
That's right.
Local
Exactly.
people, you know.
They're all land banking gardeners.
Yeah,
And now the change came when we started selling the Campbell lands, because again the seed companies entered the state, and this is perfect for the seed companies. They're going through some, problems right now. You see it on Kauai, for instance. I mean, it's GMO, this fight against GMO.
Yeah.
But they're the new, if you want to call it them, the new plantations, because the amount of revenues they generate is phenomenal per acre of property, as opposed to sugar, pineapple.
These are multinationals.
That's right.
I mean, you have the sense of it, and I know there's social benefit involved, but you have an economic benefit. But you have the sense of it is that the multinationals come, they don't really let the public know where their operation is, because they're afraid of malicious mischief.
Mm-hmm.
You know, some of the activists would like to do that, they try to make a boundary so that the seeds, the GMO seeds, arguably don't get into the next guy's property. And they do their thing. They're shipping it all offshore. None of it is sold here.
Mhm.
It goes into sort of the multinational circuit. And so, we, public, never really see them.
That's right. It's
They-
not
they-
as visible as the other
Yeah.
plantation
Yeah.
crops like sugarcane and pineapple.
I recall we went out to Barking Sands a year ago, my wife and me, to see what was over there. And there's a road that goes out to Barking Sands, and you can see these huge fields. This is serious business. There's a lot of acreage dedicated to this. So, and it just, you wonder if that provides the same kind of nutrition for the state on the policy level. You wonder if local companies, local agriculture companies, not necessarily from multinationals, can do the same thing, should be encouraged to do the same thing, or something like that. Because we do know how to grow things. The university at Siddhar is, well able to grow things. And I wonder if, I agree with you that there's a lot of, the multinational GMO production in Hawaii. But I wonder if we could develop our own agriculture using the same approach, using local owners, and recapture, say, non-GMO production, if you will.
My only concern is when you look at these companies, again, you mentioned they're large, huge companies. So the initial investment has to be great.
Yeah, sure.
When you talk about a Monsanto
Yeah.
or Dow AgroScience, or
And this is the best place.
that's right.
Here,
That's right. But if you want to be able to get into the same business they're in, can you imagine the amount of capital you will need? You need to catch up with their patents and just the way they produce this seed company. So probably it's I don't see it in the near future. Although the University of Hawaii has a wealth of information in terms of agriculture,
How to
probably
do it.
yeah. If you're able to capitalize on that knowledge, on that research, fine. But probably the initial investment, initial capital to start competing with these giants.
No,
It's insurmountable.
competing, for example, on all that those special GMO products, can't do that.
Yeah.
You have to be big board company for that. But I'm thinking that wouldn't it be nice if we could return to our roots, if you will? That seems appropriate here.
Well, you talk about roots. It's really interesting. I grew up in Whitmore Village. It's a plantation camp, Dole, right?
Mm-hmm.
During the summers, I harvested pineapple, and we were able to generate enough monies to pay for our books and tuition at the University of Hawaii. Years later, I'm selling these very lands that I used to
Oh, how cute!
harvest pineapple.
That's really wonderful.
It's really interesting, but
That's fabulous.
it's a challenge in a way. It's unfortunate because you'll never return to that large plantation that we knew back in the
No,
40s.
it's history.
It's gone. So
There's so many things in Hawaii like that too, and you want to go back and embrace that again, but you can't do it. So, do you have any thoughts in the same context about what to do with this? I mean, I see it as a huge phenomenon, and the state can make a lot of money I just wonder if the state can do more on its own, and people can do more. But on the GMO question, we have a lot of contention now, and it's hard to say in a given year whether it's growing or maybe going flat, in terms of more or less than last year and last legislature. But do you have any feelings about that, about the GMO issue? I mean, what's your cut on it?
Well, I've got to remain neutral because of who I represent, and Dole sells these lands to GMO companies as well as local farmers. So I don't know. It's personally, I'm not sure there's the scientific evidence to support a lot of the arguments made by those against GMOs. The other side of the coin is, these GMO companies, they're feeding the world. What they're generating are these seeds that are resistant to pesticides and everything else. And supposedly, anyway, it helps farmers in different countries more efficiently grow corn, same corn, then they're able to harvest and feed the animals. And I mean, it helps agriculture worldwide. But I don't know enough to give you an opinion one way or the other. We sell these lands to GMO companies. We also sell these lands to local farmers, and we don't choose one over the other.
No, sure, it's just land, or just agricultural land. Yeah, I'm trying to look for a show. I'd like to make a talk show on the GMO issue. I'd like to find a group of people who like to discuss it, especially from the pioneer and Monsanto point of view. Because I think the public is not fully informed, and a few environmental activists can sour the issue, whether they're right or wrong. Sometimes they're dead wrong.
Yeah, and then they have to press on their science, right? It makes good media.
Right, good media.
But you're right. And if there's a fault on these GMO companies, that they don't come out and show, in fact, what they're doing serves mankind. All right.
Yeah.
If there's evidence that what they're doing is dangerous, show the evidence from the other side. But if it gets down to a shouting match as to why these seed companies are no good and that sort of thing, then it doesn't do anybody any good. I'd like to see a panel, if you can put one together. I'm not sure if keep it civil.
They may not like to expose themselves.
Right.
I think they're happy enough not to expose themselves. But I think it's an important issue, and I think what I worry about. Maybe you can have some thoughts on this. Is that we have proven that we are an ideal place for the multinationals, and recent years they have acquired more and more land, and why not? And developed a huge presence in the agricultural marketplace. So query, how far does that go before we get concerned? I mean, if they, for example, took the same tracts of land that were used in the plantation days for sugar and pine, would that be of concern to us? Would we care? Would it help? Because the truth is that the counties can always raise property taxes on agricultural land, and we can make money from it. Even if we don't have jobs out of it, or a lot of jobs, we can always make money with the property taxes. It's just a question of looking at the future and seeing how the land will ultimately be used. But I'm fascinated with your thought that the state may buy agricultural lands and lease them. I guess there's two reactions to that. One is, well, they haven't done very well on Hawaiian homelands. In terms of administering the leases and managing the land, but that can be fixed. It's just a matter of getting professionals in there to do it. And then, of course, there's this huge possibility, which I'd like to talk to you about after the break, of really developing a professional, middle-class farming, population. Which looks better every day, actually, since we spoke last, and we had that panel. What was it, almost 2 years ago? I think. That putting your career, studying it, taking it seriously, becoming a farmer, actually growing things, putting them in the local market, that looks better and better all the time.
Well, I get a lot of this feedback. My daughter runs Feed the Hunger Foundation, and she makes these microloans to the farmers. She was asked by the governor's wife to take their model, they were granting microloans to the women of the Far East to lift them out of poverty, to bring that model and help the farmers here. And from her, I hear a lot of stories about young people starting their own farms, dairies. It's not in the media, it's not in the paper, but
Is it happening?
It's
I mean, we know
happening.
it's happening.
Yes, it's
Gee,
happening.
it should be in the media. We should do it in the media too. I mean, we should have people like these young farmers come and sit at this table and tell us what their experience is like. And I don't mean the the ones that are the non-profits. The Pierre Omidyar has supports Mao farms out in Waianae. I mean the mom and pops who actually need to make a living off it and send their kids to college.
Sure.
And who study farming and accounting both. Those are the ones I'm rooting for. And so you're not in a position to actually sell direct to them, or are you?
Sell to
Those middle class young people.
Sure.
And do you have a crowd following you around to buy?
No, because there are two things. I just show you the what we're selling these lands for. Even on a bulk basis, these lands are running about $10,000 per acre.
Yeah.
If we sold
But
everything in bulk.
This is first class land. Though. This is
Oh yeah,
land
these
we
are the
could
lands.
farm.
Exactly. These are former sugar cane and pineapple, Wailua Sugar and Dole,
Okay.
under one company. But there, a lot of those lands are lying fallow right now because there's no sugar. There's no.
Yeah.
What's left, interestingly enough, what the plantation has done is left the infrastructure in place. Okay,
Was it being ditches?
ditches take what's feeding a lot of the crops out in the North Shore and Wailua is the Wahiawa irrigation system. Lake Wilson, streams feed into Lake Wilson.
That's huge.
And that feeds ag water to all of the North Shore lands, sugar and pineapple. At one time, I think, the capacity of the Wahiawa irrigation system is about 50 million gallons per day. But since sugar and pineapple has disappeared, not pineapple, you still have some of the pineapple.
Yeah.
It's down to 10 million gallons per day. And it feeds some of all those farmers that have leased these lands, Dole, and even Kamehameha schools.
So it's not a shortage.
It's not a shortage, but not a shortage. Part of the agriculture revolution, if you want to call that, is really administering the water system efficiently. So the bulk buyer, I would guess, would have to be someone that buys the Wahiawa irrigation system as part of the land.
Right.
Lands without water.
Right. And to put a new irrigation system in today would be really.
Oh yeah, too expensive.
I don't realize
that's right.
how smart those guys were in the days of the plantations. They saw all this very clearly.
That's right. It's really like the Romans in the left aqueducts and everything. But that's very valuable. It goes hand in hand.
Yeah. Let's take a break, okay?
All right.
Andres Albano, Senior Vice President, Investment Property at CBRE in Bishop Square, and we're talking about returning the land to agriculture. I have a feeling we're only beginning the conversation. There's really much more here. And let's style this Community Matters with Double Entendre here on ThinkTech Talks on a given Thursday. We'll be right back after this break.
Aloha, my name is Dan Bauer and I'm the General Manager of the Plaza Club. The Plaza Club is Honolulu's premier business club. We're located in the heart of the financial district on historic Fort Street Mall. On the 20th and 21st floors atop the Pioneer Plaza, our commanding skyline views, along with our award-winning cuisine and service, are known as the place to do business downtown. We offer professional as well as social events and programs to our members and their guests, all tailored to enrich their professional and personal lives and to give them the cutting edge that they deserve in business. Why don't you consider becoming a member of the club? Call me at 531-7788 or come see me and let's talk business and how the Plaza Club can work for you. Again, my name is Dan Bauer. I'm the General Manager of the club and I'm here for you.
Okay, we're back. We're live. We're here on ThinkTech Talks, talking about community matters, returning the land to agriculture in Hawaii, with Andres Albano, Senior Vice President of Investment Properties at CBRE here downtown in Bishop Square. So yeah, I want to return to that notion. Maybe I should make myself into a young couple who have decided, we did this when we had that panel a couple of years ago too, in terms of ideating who was who and where the market was. So I'm a young couple. I love my young wife very dearly. We both studied agriculture and accounting and maybe a little technology just to help. And we are out there in the middle of central Oahu looking for, how many acres do we need for a farm, Andres?
Well, in order to put a farm dwelling,
Yeah.
let's start there, because I think it's important to be able to live where you grow.
Sure.
If it's zone ag 1, it's 5 acres. If it's zone ag 2, it's 2 acres. So you need to subdivide these lands, because even if you had 100 acres,
Yeah.
you wouldn't be able to just divide by 5.
Right.
That's a number of farm dwelling.
No.
Don't want to be
Yeah,
able to do
title
that.
issues and all that.
Yeah, you need to subdivide this property. So, unfortunately, as far as Dole is concerned, all of these lands that we have left
Are large.
are large parcels. That's why the state, energy companies are the important people in this case.
Yeah.
They can afford to buy,
Yeah.
and the land per acre is a lot cheaper than trying to buy a small parcel.
Yeah.
And then they divvy up the properties, either leasing the properties or selling to small farms.
Well, leasing sounds like it's a lot easier, because in the case of a lease, if I hold a substantial acreage, I can lease it out without subdividing it. If I want to sell it, I have to subdivide it.
That's right.
Or give a long-term lease.
Yeah.
I suppose you got to subdivide it too. So when the state comes in, I don't know, is there a plan? The state would what? Sublease portions of it? Not sell it, but sublease portions of it to the young couple?
Yeah, I don't know if selling these lands are part of their plan.
Yeah.
But I understand their policy is to buy those large acres,
Yeah.
and they're able to pay the smaller price per acre,
Yeah.
and then turn around and lease it under long-term leases,
Yeah.
to the farmers. And why long-term leases? Because then the farmers are able to finance
Yeah.
these improvements on the land.
So, okay, so in order to have a farm and to make a farm work, presumably, I mean, for planning purposes, I need somewhere between 2 and 5 acres. Probably better 5 than 2. There's economies of scale.
Yeah. That's, now I'm outside my area of expertise. Just what's the critical size for a particular type of crop or combination of crops? I don't know.
Okay, yeah, I mean, we don't have to fix that today, but it's a certain number of acres. And so it's not going to be just 1 acre only. You have to multiply that by the number of acres that you're going to buy. And then you have to add on to that the cost of building a farmhouse, a house.
That's right.
And then you probably have to buy implements and build equipment sheds before you till the soil at all. And I don't know what else. I get farm trucks and whatever kinds of farm equipment you need. So we're talking about an investment of $250,000 at least. Maybe way up there.
I would think so if you're talking about the land itself. Let's say it's leasehold.
Okay.
And if it's leasehold, then you'll probably be leasing it from the state anywhere from $300 to $700 per acre. Yeah.
So there's no cash out on that. I mean, you enter into the lease.
Yeah.
There's no upfront.
That's correct.
Yeah. So now you have to pay. You have a long-term lease, maybe 50, 60 years. Is that what the talk is? I don't know.
I don't know what deal, because the agency that does a lot of these leasing of the farmlands is the Agribusiness Development Corporation, that's headed by Jimmy Nakatani. In fact, they have. Remember the Galbert lands?
Yes.
That just got sold.
Yes.
Well, it's under his control, and he's leasing that up. And they're looking to purchase other lands because Dole has neighboring properties to the Galbert lands to facilitate the overall Whitmore Village master plan. But the plan there, I understand, is to lease it out to farmers on long-term leases. I don't know how long. It would be nice if you can tie it up for 65 years, but I doubt if that's going to be the case.
Well, the thing is, the shorter it is, the more difficult it is to finance.
Yeah.
And the longer it is, the better. On the other hand, when you get close to the end of it, you're stuck. So you probably need to have a landlord who's willing to discuss renewal with you, instead of getting, I remember there was some KS land in the back end of Hawaii Kai. That was agricultural land, and leased it for a substantial period, I don't know, 40, 50 years. And everybody was really happy to have it cheap for 40 or 50 years. And then they appraised it. This is about 5 years ago, maybe 10. They appraised it and found out that it was much more valuable than that. And they zipped everybody's lease up, rent up, and there was a big hubbub about that. And
Yeah.
people were trying to get them to keep the lease down. But that's the problem, because at the end of the lease, it's going to go to the market somehow.
That's right.
And
Except if it's the state of Hawaii. If they decide that they're the
Right.
ones going to be the
Right.
eternal landlord,
Right.
then you don't have that problem at the end of the day.
right.
So that's why they play a major role in going back to the subject of our talk,
Yeah.
revitalizing ag lands, maintaining these lands in agriculture. It has to be the state of Hawaii.
I agree with you. Nobody else is going to do it. I mean, logically, I suppose you could have Dole do this themselves, but it's not in their DNA.
Well, in their business, right? They've held it for a number of years.
Mm-hmm.
They pineapple and sugarcane, but you mentioned that example of what happened in Hawaii Kai. Here's a private landlord reaching the end of his, what he thinks is the end of his life cycle, not his life, but the life cycle of agriculture. And now he's turning around and selling it. Lanai is a perfect example of what he did. So if you have any private, I don't know if there's any business out there that would be like the state of Hawaii. I mean, but if you have shareholders or you have people, finances, agents, they're going to want a return on the investment.
Sure.
So
and they're entitled to that.
Yeah.
So the question really, in the end of the day, is whether the legislature will set aside the money for this, because it's going to cost some money. Have they? I mean, have they set aside?
Yeah, from what I understand, the legislature has in its budget $175 million.
Okay, well, that would help.
But the problem is they want to go ahead and purchase this land using special purpose revenue bonds. So when you use special purpose and revenue bonds, there's debt service that needs to be paid. So you're back into valuing the lands based on the income, because that income pays debt service, right?
Yeah.
So if you're talking about, I ran some examples. If you're talking about $700 per acre per year and a 6.5% interest rate in the bond rate, that translates to the value of that acre at $10,000 per acre. Remember, I was telling you that same farmlands are being sold today at $20,000 to $25,000. So you still have the same disparity.
Yeah.
I would think, this is my opinion, it would be better for the state to float general obligation bonds. So the state of Hawaii taxpayers are liable for the debt service. But politically, that might not be a good idea, because you have other agencies that depend on the general obligation
They'd be
bonds.
competing for the same investor.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they have other uses, University of Hawaii, I mean, all these different agencies.
Yeah.
So it's how would I solve this problem is by floating general obligation bonds, or partnering. And that's another approach. The state
A private company.
with another private company. Like, let me give you an example. If the state were to partner with an energy company, say for instance, or a large company that typically with, they have shareholders that are able to be satisfied with low returns on their investment. And a few have come by and looked at these same lands, including the water system, by the way. So they're out there. The problem is they still need to return a certain amount of money, right, for the investment. The state is a perfect, if they can partner with a.
So the state doesn't have to have a return. And
But it'd
the
be
state
better
has
if
an
you-
obligation, or
That's right.
a community obligation.
That's right,
To make this possible for young families and people who want to farm and so forth. Well, where's it going to go? What do you think? Should we be having this conversation every year or every 5 years?
I think like I said, I think in 4 years we'll sell out these lands.
Yeah.
They'll still be in agriculture.
Yeah.
But it might be agriculture combined with energy systems.
Yeah. Well, can they live together?
Well, take the windmills. They're above
So
the
you
ground.
farm under the windmills.
You farm under the windmills.
And I suppose you could also do, what do you call it, PV farms, you can't farm under the PV farm, but you can farm next to it. And so you can have this kind of landscape of different uses on the same farmland. Is that within the existing agricultural zoning? Or do you have to
Depending on
get
the
a variance?
designation of the land. If it's not prime agriculture, you're able to use it for energy systems.
So where does the important lands doctrine fit in all of this? I recall when we had our program a couple of years ago, there were very few important lands that were designated as important agricultural lands. And I remember, for example, that we asked KS provided a speaker from KHOW on a big out, and we asked him, so did you designate any land that's important yet? Because the statute was already a few years old. And he said, no, but you'll hear from us. Next time I see you, you'll know we have that. I don't know if they have, but I wonder how much trouble it is to actually get a large landowner to designate land as important agricultural land.
Well, see, there's always the landowners would rather have the flexibility, even though it's important ag lands, to be able to keep the lands from, because once you designate it as important ag lands, then it stays in agriculture basically forever. There are incentives for you to do that, okay?
It's like a historic property. Locked
so,
in.
so you don't want to be locked in unless you have to. But I think the law reads that while you have incentives to develop part of the property, that comes with designating the lands as the important ag lands. If they don't, then the city council starts designating these lands.
Oh, against the wishes of the owner.
They will say these are important ag lands. So now, I would think that the ag people, once they start seeing how close they are, this is the council,
Yeah.
to doing that, then they'll maybe, I'm almost sure that every major landowner that has a land has their list of parcels that if they have to, they can tee it up and say, these are important ag lands. But why do it now if you don't have to, right?
Yeah, that's what it sounds like. Nobody would, after you get started. I also wanted to ask you. I'm fascinated with one of the brewer properties in Pahala, in the Big Island. Yeah, it used to be a plantation there. It's a beautiful little town, but I don't think anybody has a job there anymore.
Yeah.
And it's really a delightful place. I mean, if you're ever driving around the Big Island, you got to stop in Pahala. It's too nice. And Pahala is where the biofuel plant was going to be built. That's probably still pending at the PUC. So they wanted. I don't think they actually bought the land. They must have some control on it, though. So they went to the PUC with an application, I guess responding to a eco RFP or something, to build a biofuel plant there and to grow biofuel on the old plantation there. I guess it's Brewer, and there was plenty of resistance. I thought that was strange because it would have offered jobs to people who haven't had jobs since that plantation closed a long time. And they, for one reason or another, they didn't want to do biofuel on that land. But I wonder if you have any, I wonder if there are other deals around for biofuel on land and whether there's buyers who would buy and convert it to biofuel. AKP, right? Inacoa Pono is the one trying to do this deal in Pahala. I wonder if there's anybody else trying to do that, and I wonder, where biofuel fits in the picture that you and I have been talking about.
Very few biofuel companies have come to us. Most of the companies that have come to us to purchase these lands have been, PV people and the wind people. But again, we mentioned this dilemma of having a contract from HECO first before they are able to buy these lands. But I don't know if this, the good thing about these lands, I'll restate it, is the infrastructure in place. Again, we don't have to go and build new irrigation ditches. They're there. There's a water supply. Now, except the water supply from Waihoa irrigation system is really R2 water.
What is that?
That means that you can't use that water. The Board of Health won't allow you to use that water to grow row crops. The water touches like lettuce.
So it's not pure enough.
They're not pure enough. And it's not because of the makeup of the water, I understand. It's because of the two treatment plants don't have sufficient facilities for the Board of Health to designate these waters as R1 grade water.
Yeah.
But, you know, think about what it would take to go. Now, in addition to the Waiho irrigation system, a lot of the Dole lands, and the same is true for a lot of the plantation lands in the Big Island, have private wells. Okay? So you have potable water, clean water, that you can utilize for these crops. Dole has a number
can
of
be
these.
certified. You know.
Yeah, and that. Now, the dilemma is, if you have these wells and you haven't been using it to feed your crops, and then the Water Commission comes along and says, wait a minute, you're not using it, we'll take your allocation away, because they control what you can draw out from the aquifer, right, to the state agency. So you have this battle that's going on all the time. A lot of the plantations want to hold on to that water allocation because they realize that whoever buys that land or leases from
Can't
them,
do anything without it.
they need it back.
Yeah.
You know. I'm sure the state in its superior knowledge will allow the allocation to be returned if you have a bona fide farmer on the property. But in the meantime, it causes a lot of concern for the landowners that had that allocation and are on the verge of losing it or have lost it.
Sounds to me like, you know, water is going to be an increasing problem because climate change makes water more difficult. The old infrastructure with the ditches, whatnot, is really gone. Most places, if it hasn't been maintained in 50 years, you know, it's not going to be serviceable anymore. At the same time, if you want to do diversified farming, you need plenty of water. Without it, you can't do that. So this, you know, I mean, it sounds to me like your practice, at least in this one area, is really central in the disposition and the management and maintenance of the land in the state of Hawaii that used to be used for agriculture, big agriculture. You are actually, you know, you're the guy.
Well, I'm not,
handling that.
I'm an agent for the guy that's who owns these lands, right?
No, but I mean, you're seeing it on all islands, and you're seeing all these big landowners putting it up for sale, and you're disposing of it. And I mean, this is really, it's important because it's kind of our heritage from the past, but it's our agricultural future from the future. You know?
Not all of that is dire, though, Jay, because we're returning large ag lands to farmers who's farming it on small parcels. So it remains in agriculture. You won't have that major crop like pineapple and sugar anymore, but you'll have a diverse array of different types of crops.
Mm-hmm.
So the key then is to how to keep the farmers on the land, okay? And that besides the price of the land, and that can be solved by the state buying these lands and leasing it, the cost of water, and the cost of other improvements that you just talked about. I mean, all of these play a big part in whether that farm is going to be successful or not. So,
well, I you know, as we discussed 2 years ago, whenever that program was, it's in the interest of the state to keep it in farming. It's the interest of the state economically to have a place where people can work in farming and you know, stay connected with our roots, excuse the expression. Thank you, Andres. We'll have to do this again, okay? You know,
Thank you.
It's a
Thank you
long
for
way to go
inviting me.
before we sleep. Andres Albano, Senior Vice President of Investment Property at CBRE, here on ThinkTech Talks, talking about returning the land to agriculture. A noble way to spend your time. Thank you so much, Andres.
you're a good friend, Jay.